this is Kate from Generate Magic, and the other day I watched a documentary about life in the ocean. And the documentary started out by kind of calling into question the common notion or stereotype of people have about the ocean, and how it's just very brutal, and how it's very much dog eat dog, or I guess in this case fish eat fish, and yeah, how it's all just like instinct and brutality, and kind of similar, right, to common views that people have about nature, right? How nature is just about, yeah, just instinct and survival, and, survival of the fittest. But in the documentary, they were showing how it's really the opposite, how it's actually very peaceful and harmonious. And it was just showing all these different examples of sea creatures working in symbiosis or working in cooperation with each other. And one of the examples was showing this a sea urchin that was hitching a ride on the back of a crab, and so they were both benefiting in this example, right? So the sea urchin was getting a free ride, and then the crab was getting protection from having the urchin on its back. And so I think this documentary just goes to show that, just like with beliefs or identity, right, it's always important to observe what it is that we're holding when it comes to our view about the world, right? And whether or not this view is empowering us. And so and also really just kind of changing the whole paradigm, right? And because so many times, and I probably said things like this myself, right? Just kind of hearing very kind of cynical expressions about the world, like people are just brutal, and people are warlike, and kind of using that almost kind of like as an excuse, and kind of started using nature as an excuse, right? And just saying it's kind of our nature to want to always kill each other, want to always fight with each other, right? And so then by using these kind of excuses or these sort of like outdated paradigms, it's sort of like a justification for keeping these paradigms in place. And so I think the first step is recognizing that this paradigm, right, of violence and war, and this whole conception of how the world does not have to be fixed. And it's really, and not only that, but it's also not even accurate, right? It's really not the natural state of the world. And so this kind of goes back to recognizing that if we see like a world of like violence and war and hatred, recognizing that in fact is a distortion rather than the true inherent nature of the world. Because the world and really the universe, right, is made of pure positive energy. And so it's only these distortions when we see, violence and war and hatred, it's these distortions and chaos, right? It's these distortions that we're layering on top of it. And yeah, chaos is another thing, right? And people just say, the world is random, the world is chaotic. But when you look at nature, it's anything but that, right? Nature is just pure perfection. Everything is just so intricate and built, exactly for its purpose. And when you look at even just a shell and how a shell is designed, like, you can't tell me that there's not like a divine plan behind that, right? You can't just say it was some random act from the Big Bang or whatever. And it's not even really, the point isn't even really about that, but it's just about, yeah, just kind of calling all these paradigms into question. And so I think A Course in Miracles, I think that's one of the reasons with all these workbook activities that they have you so kind of rigorously focus on these different exercises, right? Like a lot of times it'll have you repeat a line to yourself multiple times throughout the day, and sometimes even meditating on the line or the mantra for 5 minutes at a time. And because really it's kind of like an opportunity, it's recognizing that most likely, if we've grown, up in this world, we're going to have a certain amount of distortion through the lens through which we're seeing the world, right? And so it's really kind of an opportunity to correct this distortion. And really the simplest place to start is just asking yourself, anytime that you see something that seems unlike love, asking yourself, can I see love instead of this? And so then you might wonder, well, where does action come into play? But I think this is really kind of the first step, right? The first step is kind of shifting our perspective and shifting our paradigm. Because when going back to the example of the ocean, right? Like if we say the ocean is just this cruel, violent, terrible place, then that allows us to justify destroying the ocean. But then once we see what a beautiful, harmonious place it is, we can no longer justify destroying it, and we can no longer justify destroying our planet, and we can no longer justify exploiting animals, right? Because I think that's one of the kind of common, I guess, justifications that's given for example, like our factory farm system. People just say, oh, well, animals are cruel and, kill each other and really just have no, sort of moral values or whatever at all. And us humans, we're superior to the animals. So therefore, we can do, exploit them however we like. And same thing with the planet, right? People don't recognize that it's this living creature, and so it's like it's a justification, right, for being able just to destroy the planet. And if there's a plot of grass sitting there, then obviously it isn't being put to good use, right? You have to put some building or something on top of it. And this isn't intended to be a political message of any sort, but rather it's just about kind of shifting our paradigm. And once we shift our paradigm, we can start to kind of form new actions from that. And I think going back to the phrase, can I see love instead of this, that's really the basis for being able to form harmonious relationships with others. And as I see like all these shows on television with these news pundits come out, and they have all these distinguished positions, like, oh, so-and-so's for the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or whatever, and they use all this very sophisticated language and terminology. But in the end, like if you really just wanted to kind of reduce it to one concept, all it is one group of people pointing fingers at another group of people. and that's all it really boils down to. And it's instead of just kind of like recognizing our commonalities, right, and then kind of banding together to find a solution from there. And yes, and being able to see the good in everybody is very important if we want to have any hopes of reforming the prison system, right, the criminal justice system, when it comes to, like homelessness, like all the quote-unquote problems that we see in our society. Like obviously it's beyond the scope of this video, how we're going to address all of these things, but I think that's the first start, right? And because so often, I'll hear people say, oh, well, people, prisoners, they're just too far gone, there's no hope for them. Or, most people would agree that a young person that's living on the streets, that wants to be off the streets, so I want to make that distinction too, because some people, not everybody that is homeless and necessarily feels that they're living in some sort of horrible predicament, right? Like some people actually choose to be in that position. So we have to kind of respect, right, where everybody is at. But yeah, I mean, for people that I would assume, right, probably the majority of people that are living in shelters or living on the streets do not want to be in that situation. But so often, I'll hear people say that if it's an adult that's living on the streets, that they're just too far gone, that there's no hope. And same with addiction, right? And helping to rehabilitate, people that are struggling with addiction. And time again, I'll hear people kind of use the excuse that there's just no hope, that is a lost cause. And I've certainly been guilty kind of at this line of thinking in general, right? Of this kind of like very cynical way of viewing human nature, of viewing the planet in general, and just, yeah, just kind of viewing the way, you know, the way the world works. And so this video is as much for me as it is for anybody else, right? But I think that's where it all starts, is at all given times being, you know, being aware of what our views are, right? Our assumptions about ourselves, our assumptions about the world. And often too, you know, I'll hear people kind of make assumptions, right, about the opposite sex, like all men are like this, or all women are like this, and not even stopping to call into question, you know, whether or not these assumptions are really accurate. And I can tell you right now that if you're using a sweeping generalization, or we're like all or every, that is probably not accurate. Just a guess here. But yes, I think that's the first place to start, right? Is kind of calling into questions these conceptions that you have of yourself and also of the world, and then asking, you know, is this empowering? And if this conception is anything unlike love, just asking yourself, can I see love instead of this? And so with that, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.